Now, if you want to build from that, let's say you've kind of, you do that and you realize, which I think if you've been working out for the last, probably 3 to 6 months, you're probably going to realize, man, this is kind of easy. Okay. I can actually stay at 75% and it's pretty easy. Okay. So if you're somewhat fit and you've been working out for a while, you're probably going to realize, man, this is really easy. Okay. And this is when these formulas that we use really don't apply to us, right? Because the more fit you are, the more these formulas don't necessarily apply to you. So we have to create a new formula, which we're going to talk about how to become elite. Okay. So again, if you're just starting off, okay, and you're just beginning and you have zero standard and you're not monitoring your intensity at all, okay, then use this formula, 220 minus your age, get 55% of that, get 75% of that, and then work within that range during your cardio time period and do it for at least 30 minutes, okay? Now, if you absolutely have been exercising and you do that and you realize, man, that was actually pretty easy and I was at 75% the entire time, then it's time to go to the next step and learn to become more elite with your cardio. Okay. So story time really quick. So for 3 years of my life, when I was getting my degree in kinesiology, for 3 years, every single week, I had to do a scientific experiment. On Monday, we had to do, okay, this is the problem. This is our hypothesis. This is the experiment we're going to run, right? So we had to do real scientific method. Every single week for 3 weeks, this is what my weeks were like. So Monday, that's what we did. On Wednesday, we would actually go into the lab and actually run the experiment, okay? And we would collect all of this different data, okay? And then on Thursdays, we would put all the data in the spreadsheets and analyze the data, and then create a report and write our conclusion on what we found out on running that experiment. And then on Fridays, we would have to present it to our classmates on what we found when we ran this experiment. I did this every day for 3 years. This is why I am a master at analyzing data, because that's all I ever did. Once a week, analyzing massive amounts of data for 3 weeks. Okay. All right, cool. So I'm telling you this story because one of the experiments that we ran was using fitness trackers to understand how to use heart rate. And what we realized when we did this experiment is we realized that the more fit you were, because we had 3 different subjects. We had a very fit subject. We had a it actually had 4 different subjects. One didn't do anything. He was our control method. But we had somebody who was fit, intermediate, and a beginner, okay? And what we realized is the more fit you were, the more you kind of had to create your own scale. And a better scale to use instead of heart rate was called your RPE, or your rate of perceived exertion. And it's a scale of 1 to 10, okay? So 10 is the hardest it can possibly be, and 0 is super, super easy, okay? So we use that scale. So using that scale was actually a better way of monitoring our progress than heart rate, okay? So this is how we would do it. If your goal is to run for 30 minutes, then you want to be at an RPE at about an 8, a 9, or a 10, and the more elite you are, you're going to be at a 9 or a 10. Okay, so that means that you have to find the pace. Let's say you're going to go run outside for 30 minutes. You have to find the pace that you can run at for 30 minutes straight and be able to last that full 30 minutes, okay? If you can't last that full 30 minutes, then chances are you're exceeding your speed. You're going way too fast. You're going to be out of your target heart training zone, so to speak. Okay. So if you can't finish that 30 minutes, that means that you're running too fast. Okay. But if you finish that 30 minutes and you still have a lot left in the tank, then chances are you are probably below your target heart training zone. Okay. So if you are running for 30 minutes, the sweet spot is you want it to be completely dead by the time you finish that 30 minutes. You want to make sure that you have enough to finish, but when you finish, you're like, man, I couldn't have gone another minute or another 2 minutes. Okay. So when we started to use that scale, we started to notice that the more fit people would actually go, number one, when it came to heart rate, they were way out of their heart rate zones according to what the formula said. But that was a better way of tracking fat loss was saying, okay, I'm going to do 30 minutes of a physical activity of cardio, right? Of moderate cardio. We're not talking about HIIT training. We haven't gotten into that yet. Okay. And we're not going to get into that into this thing, but this is straight moderate cardio. The pace that you want to be at is where you can last for the full amount of time that you're doing, and you don't feel like you had any more left in the tank, but you were able to finish. So there's a little sweet spot in there. Okay. So once you found that out, once you found what that sweet spot is, let's just say on a treadmill, for example, let's say you're running on a treadmill and you realize that at 5 miles an hour, you can go for 30 minutes and you feel like you could not go another minute. Okay. Boom. That's what we've got. That's the time that you're going to work. So once we figured that out and we figured out that sweet spot, okay, then we went and put a fitness tracker on you and said, okay, what is your heart rate during this time period? And then we marked that down. Okay, boom. When you're between this heart rate and this heart rate, this is your fat loss period. This is where you are going to burn fat. So we are creating a new scale for you. Okay. So you first got to find what that sweet spot is. Okay. What speed can you actually run? Okay. The second thing that you got to do is you got to look at your heart rate and you're going to say, okay, what is my heart rate during this time period? Okay. And the third thing that you've got to do is you've got to look at how many calories you burn during that time period. Okay. Now, once you find your sweet spot, we're going to call it the time that the hardest you can work for that given time. Then you find what your heart rate was during that thing. You write that down, and then you write how many calories you burned, and you write that down. Okay. And now you've created your standard. Okay. So now if you want to burn more fat during that time period, now you can say, I need to burn more calories. Okay. This is when now calories actually matter because you know you're in your target heart training zone. Okay. So now I want to burn more calories. So every cardio session I do, okay, I want to stay, let's say we're still sticking with the 30 minutes. I want to work harder to where I can burn more calories and push myself closer and closer and closer to that limit. But I always want to make sure that I finish that 30-minute time period. Okay.